It's first pitch on the WagerTalk TV YouTube channel, and we're going to be getting you ready to bet the doubleheader today in the Mets and Tigers series. And then, don't worry, we'll get you some other big game breakdowns and best bets. Nats, Pirates, as the undefeated No More Buccos looking to bounce back, and Miami visiting St. Louis. All that info coming your way right here. And joining me, Adam Trigger and Steve Merril. If you have a specific game you're looking for on that little rundown, don't worry. All of our videos are time-stamped. You can scroll to the game that you need to see and get that info that you know and love. Trig, let's get into it, man. It looks like Mother Nature's going to cooperate today, so I don't think we have to be waiting with bated breath to see if the doubleheader will happen. It is going to happen between the Mets and the Tigers. You want to break down both games. You feel a little bit stronger about game two, but how does it all start with game one? The Mets favored over the Tigers here.
Yeah, Dan. Well, yes, it looks like these games are going to be played. And this is a third. These two games are a third of the card today, right? There's only 6 games total. So I figured we'd cover both of these here. But I want to talk about game one because what happens in game one is going to determine whether game two is the best bet for me or not. As far as game one is concerned, though, I lean toward the Mets. I broke this game down yesterday on WagerTalk today, obviously before we realized it was canceled, and gave my handicap of the Mets. So I'll just kind of like expound upon that here, but in the context of now the doubleheader. So, I do think these teams are relative equals, like in the grand scheme of things. I know you've got the Tigers are 4-0, the Mets are 0-4, but really I have them, power rated the same. And I don't think like a 4-game sample is gonna put me off of that. That being said, it's tough to see the Mets starting 0-6, but at the same time, now that we're talking doubleheader here, Dan, it's tough to see this Mets team sweeping a doubleheader with the way that they've been playing. And, of course, with the way the Tigers have been playing. Their team ERA right now is 1.89. It's second in Major League Baseball. While the Mets come in and they haven't scored a run in 17 innings. And they're hitting a $153 as a team, during that stretch. So, yesterday when I was talking about the Tigers, I criticized them for, they're 4-0, but they haven't really been dominant in those wins. They've been a little bit fortunate, but at the same time, they're also 4-0 and they found a way to win games. Whereas the Mets have found a way to lose games, bad errors, no timely hitting. You've got one team playing losing baseball, one team playing winning baseball. And a big red flag I found with the Mets that I didn't have this in front of me yesterday. They've yet to attempt to steal this season. And you go back to last year and they utilized the steal as little as any team in the league. And that's a red flag to me because I truly believe that that's become, a huge part of the game now since some of the rule changes. And if not utilizing it or not being able to take advantage of it is probably going to lead you to more losses than wins. That being said, I looked at the lineups. You've got the lineups out now for game one, and the Mets are definitely putting their A team out there, whereas the Tigers have this a little bit rotated. Probably 2 to 3 regulars will sit in game one and play game two. So I do think that tilts the scales a little bit toward the Mets. As far as starting pitching, you've got Casey Mize. He's going to start for Detroit. Hasn't made a start in 2 years. I don't think the last time we saw him in the big leagues was early 2022. Since then, he's had Tommy John surgery. He's had back surgery. Didn't pitch at all last year, but he had a really solid spring. So, going to be interesting to see what the Tigers get from him. Adrian Houser's a veteran. We kind of know what we'll get. Probably going to get a professional effort, 5-6 innings. He's going to give the Mets a chance to win. It'll likely come down to the bullpens, and I see the Mets just prioritizing game one a little bit more than the Tigers do. They've already done it with their lineup, and I think that you're going to get all the Mets' top relievers in game one. So I do lean the Mets' way. It's not going to be a client play for me at the current price of like minus 140, but I do think the Mets get game one, and then we'll talk about how I think game two is going to go. But just for a game one lean here, we'll go with the Mets.
Yeah, and taking a look at the WagerTalk or the WagerTalk.com live odds screen, it looks like this is one of the matchups you're going to want to try and shop around on. We're seeing, some different prices out there, but it definitely seems like the buy sign has been on the Mets here in game one to maybe finally shake off the start of the season that they've had thus far. So we're looking towards the Mets. Says Trig in game one. What's he going to do in game two? We'll find out. Hey, if you like the content, all we ask you to do, hit that like button and hit that subscribe. And if you want to miss, or you don't want to miss any of our great shows when we go live or our single game videos are posted, hit that little bell as well. And you'll never miss any of the great content here at WagerTalk TV. You definitely don't want to miss the Fade the Public videos that my man Steve Merril is dropping on a weekly basis here. Steve, let's talk some Pirates and Nationals. The hopes of the 163-0 season have evaporated for the Pirates. They fell to the Nats yesterday. What are we thinking here for this game? How are you looking to bet it? A bounce back potentially, or you think maybe runs stay under again? How are you looking to bet this matchup, Steve?
I thought it'd be a fun game to talk about because we did talk about this yesterday on Wednesday, and the Pirates did get their first loss against once upon a time, my Washington Nationals. We'll see if they become my Nationals again anytime in the future. But they do have probably their best pitcher on the mound here, Josiah Gray, but he did not look that way in the season opener back on the 28th of March against Cincinnati. That 8-2 loss gave up 7 earned runs in just 4 innings of work. Maybe he's got some issues. I don't think so. He finished last season very strong. In fact, last year he gave up 2 runs or less in his final 3 starts of September. And he's also fared very well against these Pirates, at least last year. 2 appearances, including an April appearance and then a September appearance. Gave up only 3 runs in over 12 innings, only allowed 8 hits in those 12 innings. So I do expect a good showing by Josiah Gray. I think the big question here is, do the Pirates bounce back, as you said, off their first loss of the season? This is also the final game of a 3-game road stand. It's also the final game of a 7-game road trip to start this season. And then they return home. Pittsburgh will be back home for the first time all year with their home opener tomorrow on Friday against my Baltimore Orioles, my once-a-time Baltimore Orioles, now once again my Baltimore Orioles. You can see how I zigzag within the D.C. metro, Northern Virginia area with my baseball teams. So maybe it's a little bit of a flat spot. But instead of trying to guess which side shows up here, I think the total does have value with the under for a couple reasons. First of all, it's on that key number of 9. It's 9 under 20. 9 is a very key number in baseball, so we're getting some value there. I also mentioned it looks like a good bounce-back spot for Gray, who I do rate as kind of a Class A, Class B pitcher. They usually bounce back after a bad showing. And then also, as you dig in deeper into the lefty-righty splits, really remarkable how much better these teams have been or how much worse they've been. And it really sets up for a low-scoring game for that reason. The Nationals have not been a good offensive team overall this year, but if you look at on-base plus slugging, it's a great overall metric for overall offense. The Nationals have the second best OPS against right-handers in the entire league this year out of 30 teams, yet they're facing a lefty tonight. They are dead last, 30th against lefties, a 382 OPS, worst in the league against lefties, and 872 OPS, second best in the league against righties. Now, I know it's an early season. It's only 130-some at-bats, and we only talk about 35 at-bats against lefties, but that's a huge extreme. So that would definitely work against the Nationals offense facing a left-handed starter this afternoon in Perez. Meanwhile, the Pirates have been the opposite. They've been better against lefties, weaker against righties, and now they're facing a right-hander in Gray who looks like he's in bounce-back mode. So I think there's several reasons to like the under 9 minus 120 in this early daytime game at 4 o'clock Eastern.
That's Steve Merril. You can check him out at WagerTalk.com, and you can get him or any of your favorite cappers 90 days of plays. That's right, 3 months of action. You can chop off over $300 on that. You go ahead. What's up, Adam?
I gotta ask Steve a question. Steve, do you know where Josiah Gray went to college? Off the top of your head?
No, I do not off the top of my head. Must be someone in New York.
Well, you're more now because he went to Lemoyne. He went to Lemoyne and had one of the
Dolphins.
Good God.
Lemoyne Dolphin had one of the best seasons in the history of Lemoyne baseball. Wow. I think he went like 11-0 in like 13 starts. His ERA was like 1 or something. So yeah,
that is shocking.
Probably the best Lemoyne athlete that's.
Yeah, well, I was just going to say.
I know Steve loves his Lemoyne Dolphins.
He's got to be one of the only MLB guys ever for Lemoyne. And for those that don't watch the college basketball show, 2 things: shame on you, and second of all, Lemoyne is a college, despite the Dolphin nickname, up in Long Island, I guess, New York. What part of New York?
Syracuse, right?
Syracuse.
Right
that's right.
Like 20 minutes from Ireland.
Yep.
Yeah, because they beat Syracuse, and Jim Boeheim has never played zone defense since. That's right. No, it is Syracuse. But yeah, you don't get a lot of quality baseball guys in that neck of the woods, so that's why I was surprised. But I figured it was a Northern New Yorker since you were bringing it up. That's incredible, Lemoyne.
And Trig, why would you want people to, or why would you want me to tell people that they could get your plays for 3 months for under $6 a day when you could tell people that somebody played baseball at Lemoyne? This was a great segue into.
I'm questioning my underplay by him now.
Even no, I was just gonna say it supports. It's, Steve's talking about under Gray bouncing back. And, we had such a thing going during college hoop that I figured Steve probably ups it to like a client play now that he knows it's a Lemoyne guy he needs the under with. So I just wanted to know.
Only if Brian Powers going to the game. If Brian Powers going to the game, it's a lock.
Right.
That is true. If you want something that really nobody cares about, Lemoyne lacrosse team, they moved up to D1 this last year. So now that's something that definitely nobody cares about. So
they're probably better than half the teams in the nation being the New York lacrosse team. This is totally different than college baseball. Yeah,
you're not totally wrong, different. Steve. But gentlemen, let's get into some best bets here. And I find it interesting because Trig, this is something that I've seen you do on Wager Talk today as well, is typically when people are talking about double headers, sometimes people will say, I want to see what happens in game one before I want to bet game two. For you, you come in with a preconceived notion of how you maybe even see game one going. Now, does that affect how you see game two, or are these two games in a vacuum because your best bet is in Tigers and Mets, the second part of the doubleheader?
It's a really good question. So I don't think that you should be betting game two before you see game one, because who knows what's going to happen? I mean, there could be injuries. Really, though, Dan, what it comes down to, what I like to look at for game one is what happens with the relief pitching. Who burns up the key relievers? That's what I want to know before betting game two. And that's why I refuse to lock something in before I know what happens, right? But I do know the way I want to play it, and I know the way I'm going to play it if game one sort of goes to plan. So in this case, I think this is a really lazy line that was put out by the bookmakers to make Manning the underdog here to Butto. I think this I really honestly believe this. I think they just copy-pasted the game one lines to game two because they don't know much about these two pitchers. Both were just recently called up from AAA. But I actually had a chance to watch both of these guys make their AAA start last week. And I think there's a clear advantage on the mound for the Tigers with Manning over Butto. So if the bullpens shape up to be like, let's go back to game one for a second. If the Mets win a close game where they use their high leverage guys and the Tigers don't, that's going to make me more inclined to play the Tigers in game two. If the Tigers end up winning game one and they burn through their top relievers, then it's probably going to be a pass for me, just because the Mets will then be going into the second game 0-5 and in a much more desperate spot. So that's really why I want to see what happens in game one before I lock this in. But without a doubt, I like the Tigers from a matchup perspective, and I'm hoping that the Mets win a close first game or just win the first game, because I'll probably make this a client play. And if I do, I'll just tweet it out because there won't be much time, between the two games. So let's talk about the matchup here. Matt Manning lost out on the fifth spot as a starter in the spring. It wasn't so much that he wasn't good enough. It's just that Casey Mize and Reese Olson had really good springs as well. So, in the case of the Tigers, there just wasn't enough rotation spots to go around. And that, Manning ended up being the odd guy out in that regard. Started the season for AAA Toledo. I watched his start last Friday. I thought he was great. Something I read that he was working on was a pitch to increase the strikeouts. It's kind of been the knock on him, was a lack of swing and miss. So he kind of added like a changeup type sinker splitter. It's an off-speed pitch that sinks a little bit. And in his start on Friday for AAA Toledo, 5 innings, 1 run, 7 strikeouts. So in just 71 pitches. So it was that's a pretty economical outing to strike out 7 guys and get 5 innings of 1-run ball. So that was something to me that I knew I was going to want to play on next time out. And now I'm going to get the chance to do it at the big league level when he pitches for the Tigers. He's a guy that's had really poor luck throughout his career. He's been constantly injured. This is a guy in Manning that was a 9th overall pick back in 2016, a highly touted prospect for years. And, last year he ended up missing half the season last year, Dan, with a fractured toe. Like, it's just like, some bad injury luck. Before or working around the injury, his ERA was like 3.5. He was pitching pretty good. So I think that, and the addition of, another pitch, if this pitch is as effective as it looked for the Toledo Mud Hens last Friday, Dan. He could be onto something here, and he might be a guy that has some value now. Jose Butto, I always say his name wrong. This guy's, in my opinion, a AAA guy. I've seen him pitch in person a bunch. He pitches for the Syracuse Mets. He's been on AAA Syracuse for the majority of the last couple seasons, made it up to, I think he made 10 appearances for the Mets last year. But I mean, his stuff, in my opinion, is like probably never going to play at the big league level. I think he probably ceiling is AAA, at least from what I've seen from him for the last couple of years. Last week, okay against Rochester, took the loss, 3 runs in 5 innings. He's just not better than Matt Manning. That I'm willing to say that. So if the right things happen here in game 1, and then the Tigers come in game 2, I just told you they were resting a couple regulars in game 1. All of those guys are going to be in the lineup in game 2. So I just think the wrong team may be favored. I think it's a lazy line by the books to just kind of like throw a line up there for game 2. And I won't be at all surprised if the Tigers start to take money at some point. So they're going to get my money if the Mets win this first game. If they don't, I'll probably pass. But that's the way I see the matchup in game 2. I think it could be a really good spot to take plus money with the Tigers if game 1 works out the way we want it to.
So don't bet it just quite yet. Maybe tune in, watch a little bit of game 1. But Trigg saying, hey, if you want a little dog price, check out the Tigers in game 2, a pitching mismatch. Or a pissing mismatch. We don't know which one it may be in game 2 there. Steve, let's talk Marlins and Cardinals. 0-7 for the Marlins. Yesterday when we were live here on First Pitch, we had someone in the live comments asking, hey, the Marlins just scored 2 runs. Are they live? Are they a live bet? We were like, hell no. Don't bet the Marlins. We're not watching the game, but don't bet the Marlins. They didn't score again after that. So, Steve, does this continue the offensive woes for the Marlins as they're taking on the Cards? How are you looking to bet this one?
Yeah, I mean, keep in mind, the worst team in baseball last year was the Oakland A's. They went 50-112. So the worst team in baseball almost every season wins at least 50 games. So the Marlins have at least 50 games to win still here on the remaining 155-game schedule. But trying to guess when that is always dicey. And also, when a team is in bad form, you want to be careful. But you also look for catalysts as well. Things might change. And Miami started 0-7 at home. Now they're taking to the road for the first time at St. Louis for 3 games, at the New York Yankees, which will be a very tough series. But, maybe getting away from home. They have one of the weakest home fields anyway in baseball. Maybe it'll be a positive. And on the flip side, St. Louis played their first 7 on the road, went 3-4 against the Dodgers and Padres. Now they return home without rest for their home opener. Should be a focused spot, but then again, teams are turning home, no rest with that off that road trip. It's dicey. So instead of looking at the side, I'm going to look at the total here for a free play for the show, and I do like the under 8.5. Now, this line opened 9 in some spots. It instantly dropped down, even opened 8.5 at others. It doesn't look like we're going to get that key number. It's now 8.5 under 20, but I agree with that early sharp money. I think they're looking at this game the right way, and both offenses have been very suspect. In fact, the Cardinals have only gone over in 1 game all season. They've had multiple pushes, but they've only gone over once in 7 games. And that 1 game was when they put up 6 runs in a win against the Dodgers. They only had 6 hits. That was a very mixed leading 6-run game on just 6 hits. In fact, they've had 6 runs or less in every game, and they've had 8 hits or less in 6 of their 7. 8 hits or less. They're not putting the ball in play. That makes it difficult to score. Marlins, meanwhile, despite being 0-7, they're 6-1 to the over. Very misleading, though. It's because their pitching, especially their bullpen, has been awful. Gave up 10 runs in that loss to the Angels yesterday. I'm just not sure the Cardinals can take full advantage, though. And here we have another lefty versus righty matchup. And Weathers is suspect, to say the least, for the Marlins. But the Cardinals have been much weaker so far this season against left-handed pitchers. In fact, it's been pretty the dichotomy has been pretty extreme. They have a 622 OPS, which is still like bottom third of the league against righties, but they're second to worst in all of MLB. Only team worse are those Washington Nationals against left-handers. Cardinals have a 407 OPS against lefties. On average, teams hit about 700-800 OPS, just to put it in perspective. So I do think Weathers can have some success for that reason. Cardinals offense is very mediocre to start with. On the season, St. Louis is batting just .212 as a team, averaging less than 4 runs a game. And the Marlins averaging just 3.5 runs, 197 batting average this season. I think it all adds up to a low-scoring game here, under 8.5 between the Cardinals and Marlins at 4:15 Eastern Thursday afternoon. And don't forget, off to a great start, over 70% so far this year on baseball best bets and free plays. So be sure to check out those daily free plays as well for basketball and baseball Also, NBA #1 all time since I joined WagerTalk 3.5 years ago on NBA sides. I'm #1 again this year, 55 and 35 on NBA sides this season. I was 103 and 63 on all NBA best bets last calendar year. Playoffs were 29 and 17. Playoffs start in about a few weeks here. So don't forget about the NBA. I know we're talking baseball, but it's a great time to be on board. And right now, the rest of the NBA at discounted price if you use promo code NBA219. Details are on my page right now. It works out to just over $2.50 a day for the rest of the NBA season. NBA 219. Steve Merril, WagerTalk.com. And oh, by the way, while you're here on WagerTalk TV, I have an NIT Finals for you tonight, Indiana State and Seton Hall, and also separate videos for both Final Four matchups, NC State, Purdue, Alabama, UConn. Those are all free right here on WagerTalk TV.
Yeah, and all you got to do is hit that subscribe button and you'll get all of those. And if you hit the little bell, the notifications will come as they drop and get on the right side of some of these line moves. Before you leave this video, though, make sure you hit that like button. Hop below in the comments and let us know what your best bets are. And then when you head on over to WagerTalk, check out Steve's got a Final Four best bet up now. You can grab that play for just $25 or grab 90-day all access for under $6 a day. Details are on your favorite cappers page. That's going to do it for us, gentlemen. Big thanks to Steve. He is looking at the under in the Marlins and Cardinals, and big thanks to Adam Trigger as well. He's looking at Game 2, taking the Tigers, if all goes right, in Game 1 for his best bet. We appreciate you tuning in there. Hey, if you want some more betting content, you don't have to go anywhere. Click that video on your screen right this moment, and you continue getting all the info you love to cash in on all the sports you love to bet right here at WagerTalk TV.